Now we move on to fractures. So we have just hopefully a few minutes left or so. Well, I'm doing okay in an hour. So, so types of fractures, you're going to hear both these terms. So sometimes it's called a closed fracture and sometimes it's called a simple fracture. So I will use both terms. So make sure closed means that the break is in the bone, stayed within the skin. You just basically didn't break through the skin. You did break the bone, so the bone has gone through, but it hasn't poked through. Sometimes called a compound fracture or an open fracture, then we have penetrated the skin. And they love to show those on TV. He has a compound fracture, and they'll show his bone hanging out of his leg. They're better than they used to. They used to show those athletes on TV, especially like basketball. I know my husband's a big basketball fan, and they show them because they're wearing shorts and you can see those legs, and so you see that bone hanging out. They don't show the gruesome stuff like they used to. Thank goodness. Okay, so that's the difference between open, closed, also called simple and compact. Let's make sure I didn't double click. Okay. All right, so then the other three types we're going to look at is a transverse. So you can have a simple transverse. So the first words that we use can go with these. So this is now talking about the direction at which the cut or the break is, I should say. And we've learned that transverse means straight across. So if it is a straight across, it is called a transverse fracture. If it goes all the way out the skin, it probably would be a compact transverse fracture. So you can see if it stayed within, it's a simple transverse fracture or a closed transverse fracture. Oblique means at an angle. So if it has gone at an angle, that would be an oblique fracture. And I know you've heard of a hairline fracture, so I want to bring that one up. Hairline, we don't see any movement in the bone. What it does, it goes along with the, that did not draw well. It will go along with the diaphysis, or it goes along with that. So we don't see any movement left or right because it goes parallel with the bone is what's happening with a hairline fracture. So, alrighty. And then we got a comminuted, and that is when basically the bone has shattered into multiple pieces. And we do see this with the elderly because their bones are so more brittle because they have less of the collagen in them. Less of the collagen makes them have more brittle bones, and so rather than giving us a nice neat cut or break, we get more of a shatter. And I don't know if you can see that definitely looks like it's got more than one break in it. So we do see that pretty a lot with the elderly. Common. So if it's in multiple pieces, is a comminuted fracture. And then this one's also common in elderly, but actually common in little children too. It's called an impacted fracture. And that's what's happened is when the bone pretty much has come, you've got maybe a fall and you've hit the ground and you're coming down and up. And so it will break because of that. It happens up here on your humerus, and we'll look at that in lab of that area where it happens when people go and they're ready to fall and they'll grab themselves. It will break right here called the surgical neck on the humerus. So that's right little area right there. Very common impacted fracture there. A spiral kind of sounds what it would be a twisting when people, a lot of times ankles and things with their legs will twist. One foot will get caught into another and they'll twist around one another like that. You can break a bone that way. And then you get a green stick. And so green stick is more common in children, and that's when you get a break, but it doesn't go all the way through the bone. So think about like outside, if there was a stick on the ground and the stick was still kind of a fresh stick a green stick and you go to try to break it, it doesn't break all the way through, that is called a green stick, and that is a fracture that is not going all the way through the bone. Very common in children because their bones are doing all that formation stuff. We don't get that nice clean break with them. So, and then this little chart here just gives a really nice overview of all of them. So if you wanted to look just at that thing, there's a nice overview of all of the fractures. All right, so let's look, and I think these are similar to the pictures that I use on your test. So you should have these pictures on the handout that I gave you. So as closed is not breaking through the skin. Open would be breaking through the skin. Okay, this one is straight across. So if you want to make that a lot darker in there. So I'd like you to look at the spiral, which is this one, and that oblique that they've got listed right below it here, that's oblique. And so there's not a lot of difference in that picture. So what I would do to show that I wanted a spiral is I would put arrows in there to show that this bone has gotten twisted. Under the an x-ray you really can kind of see it definitely looks like a twisted for a spiral fracture. Okay, so on your test I will add those arrows to show that it's spiraling around, because it's hard to tell. That looks just like an oblique at an angle, right? So I just wanted you to know that I'll add those, because this is matching or fill in the blank, I'm not sure, on your next test. And so on this one, there's the comminuted. I don't know if you can tell that it is in many pieces here. And then the impacted, I would also add a down arrow showing that we've got a force going this way and this way that has called that break, because again that looks like an oblique. Oblique is not shard like that. So but to let you know that I want impact that has caused this fracture. Here's green stick. Can you see there that little chunk that's cut out there? And then oblique is at an angle. And I don't know, maybe the difference is oblique, they actually do separate from one another. The spiral, they're just like twisted. And that could be a way to tell too. But to help you on that, on the spiral, I'm going to add those to let you know that it's been twisted. Y'all can, you know, if you were trying to break something, you twist around it to break it. So these are just common fractures that you'll see in the medical